wanted to start this podcast with someone that is part of a major turning point for our whole family. When we met Amy, we were emotionally broken. My daughter, Em, had been through bullying at school when she was very little at reception. It left her anxious and convinced that school was not safe and that adults would not help. I had a newborn and we were both exhausted and traumatized. Amy is the teacher who changed all of that by listening with her heart, never making assumptions, and deciding that what she was seeing in that complex, demanding child and parents was a message rather than a behavior to manage. I'll be sharing more about the bullying story of what happened to our daughter and how this has changed our lives in a separate episode coming soon. Please subscribe so you don't miss out. To support our podcast, please check our page at patreon.com/fastbrainfullheart. For now, I'd like to introduce you to Amy Denbee, a primary school teacher here in the UK with a quiet reputation for the thing that matters the most and gets measured the least, making a child feel genuinely seen. She is also neurodiverse herself, and we will discuss how that affects the way she sees the children in the classroom. We will also talk about the weight of flagging a possible neurodivergence to parents. She was my daughter's Year 1 teacher, and through her lenses, we experienced healing and the initial steps into discovering our kids' neurodiverse profile. I'm here with Amy, and as you've learned, she has a really important role in our lives. And I would like to start, Amy, asking you perhaps my bravest question of all. When we arrived, at Year 1, as parents, what did you see?
So the first time that I met you was on a Teams call, and I just saw these very anxious, very nervous parents who had a daughter who was so precious, so important to them, who's had such a negative experience in reception. And it was so clear that trauma that Em had, actually so much of that was your trauma as well. The impression I got is that you felt that you'd failed her. And although I don't think that's necessarily true, that was so clear having those initial conversations of you put your child in the care of teachers and you expect your child to be happy and safe, and that's clearly not what had happened in the previous setting. And at the time, I remember thinking, they're using these really strong, really emotive terms of bullying, and that she was getting targeted. But also because I hadn't met you properly before, didn't know the other school, didn't know Em, I was thinking, okay, so you always have to take these conversations with a pinch of salt of, is that actually what happened? Are these just going to be parents that are super high maintenance and super hard work because obviously everyone's child is super precious? And I remember saying to you, well, I'll do for Em exactly the same as what I would do for every child in my class. Trying to be almost set those boundaries on really, really early on of, I'm going to treat everyone the same and I will listen to her opinions just like I would every other child. And I think possibly for you, I don't know if that was reassuring, that I was just saying, look, this is just normal practice for me, or if you wanted more from me. I'm not sure, but I think I've said before, because I was coming back from maternity leave myself, my mum was next door looking after my little boy, and I remember coming off that phone call with you, and she was like, oh my gosh, they're really intense parents. They just sound like they're really anxious. And I think my mum was like, I think you handled that really well. She wasn't obviously listening in to the whole conversation, but she would have heard little bits. And I was a little bit nervous about them meeting Em and meeting you in person. Because I was like, I really hope that I can do everything possible to make your experience coming to our school, and most importantly Em's experience, a positive one. And that was my my like main goal when meeting both you and Em for the first time was just to build up that trust, that I will be open with you, I will be honest with you. If Em has done something that might upset someone else, I will speak to her about it and I will let you know, and vice versa. There isn't going to be any like closed doors where I'm not telling the truth. And I think that the impression I got for you as a family was that was really, really important and really key, that to build up that trust, but also that mutual understanding that we were going to be honest and open and truthful, and that we were working together to support Em and to help her feel safe.
Yes, you got it right. We were completely traumatized, hurt, and it still touches me in the point where you can hear it in my voice. It is hard to think about it. I do still feel that I have failed her, and this is something that I think it will take a lifetime for me to overcome that feeling, especially coming from a point where my postgrad and specialization is bullying, and then I saw it. Oh, well, I didn't see it happening quick enough with my own child, and so yes, I think you read it correctly. We were on edge. We were kind of looking for where is that lifeboat, because we are drowning, in this situation, and we found it, and I think that your approach to it was of so much openness to hear, and the reassuring reaction to what we were saying, and I get it. We used very strong words because this is how exactly what happened to us was really strong, and it has names, and I'm not that kind of person to be afraid of use those big names, and I think that we've learned that together along those last few years, that I'm not afraid of that big bad wolf kind of story. We just face it, but we need to face it, and we felt that bravery and kindness coming from you, that we were like, okay, we're doing this, because it wasn't just changing her from schools and from the type of system, it was also moving away 2.5 hours from where we were established, where our community was, where our families were set. So we were completely going to a different direction, taking everything, selling and moving to the countryside, and moving from a regular school to an independent school, and what to expect, and we were welcomed, both by you and the headmaster, that we had a wonderful conversation with, and I posed those questions directly to him. Don't tell me it doesn't happen in your school. What do you do? I'm not taking any beautiful fluff here. I want to know, what do you do? I want you to give me examples, I want that kind of reassurance, and he did, and then just soon after that, it felt very much like you had that open heart, to look at her, and to look at the situation in a bigger kind of context, and know that we as parents needed, perhaps the first half of the year, more of your intense contact and back and forth, to with little checking ins here and there, and by all means, that's what happened, and the results, they speak for themselves. We settled into this new school environment, that it's been brilliant for her, and she settled, and she learned to trust school, and she learned to let herself feel safe, and find her way with her new friends and all of that. So it's a beautiful restart, if we can say that. But yes, I wanted to start with this very difficult kind of feedback kind of question, because a lot of light is put into the child, and how the teachers see the children, but perhaps not enough is talked about the difficulties of communicating with parents, and how teachers have an overload of work and have to deal with so many different parents that come from so many different backgrounds and experiences themselves, and you have to mediate that and understand that in a very complex way. So we were there, open and willing for conversations to happen. And by then, we had no idea of her full picture in terms of neurodiversity and neurocomplexity. Which then leads to my next question is, you said what you saw in like us, like very anxious parents that, are they just demanding? Are they just, like what's happening with us people? Am I going to have a lot of work in here? Is this a bad decision to allow this child come in? But what did you see when she started, her first day? What did you see who was that child coming into your classroom? Can you describe, if you remember, a little bit of her behavior?
So from what I remember, there was a real mix of where she hadn't been in school since, I think, the April. I think there was a little bit of excitement of new school, potential of new friends, new teacher, fresh start, but also that anxiety of, am I going to be listened to? Am I going to be safe? And I remember her coming up, like checking in with me a lot during those first few days, but also letting me know what other children were doing. And there was that kind of real, like, they're not following the rules. You've been really clear on what the rules are, and they're not doing it. And I remember having those conversations of, actually, we need to give everybody a chance. They might not be doing it yet, but they will. They're still learning. And you don't need to take on that role in this classroom. I am the teacher. I will keep everybody in this room safe. And I think over time she really let that role go. Yeah, and I remember as well that she took everything to heart. She just loves so deeply, but also feels so deeply as well. And one of the most important things in those first few days, I think, for her was to be heard. That if she came with a problem or something happened, that we would deal with it and we would listen to her, rather than just fob her off of, it's fine, leave, stop worrying or what have you. Actually, to unpick it with her of, actually, how are you feeling and what has happened? And this is our school rule, so this is what we are going to do about it as the adults of the room, as the teachers. And really quickly, she kind of began to understand that actually we were the safe adults. She could come and tell us things, and we would respond to it rather than just dismissing it as something that wasn't important, because it was obviously so important to her. And very quickly, I feel that she began to trust us, and we built up a really lovely relationship where she just felt secure. That's my impression. Yes. from my side.
Yes.
And she was happy coming in, and she'd write me these beautiful little cards or draw me pictures, and she just wanted not only to kind of impress us and show us her knowledge and show us bring things in from home of, oh, I want to share this information with you, which is, she's really opening herself up of, this is who I am and this is what I enjoy and this is what I want everyone to know about me. And I wonder if at the previous school she had shut herself off, that perhaps in her attempt to protect herself, she wasn't able to be herself. I might be wrong on that. I'm just kind of guessing from what I saw when she first came in. But also she found friendships challenging. And I think that's probably a thread that wasn't just during those first few days, but throughout year one. And actually, she really settled into the class, and the children were super accepting of having someone new, and they wanted to join in her friendships as well. But where she'd had that one particular friend in London, and they spent all their time together, she didn't ever develop that one best friend. And the girls in that class, none of them really had a best friend. They kind of just all played together.
She had a fixed idea of what a best friend would look like, and she was looking for who's that in this new crowd. And I don't think that 3 years on she has, found one that fits the entire mold. She may have now expanded her idea of what is a best friend, which is much better in a way. But I remember very well her saying something that it struck me like, what? What are you saying? She said, Mommy, I'm investing on this one to see if she's my best friend. And I said, what do you mean investing? She's like, there's a 6-7-year-old child. Like, I'm investing on this. No, I'm giving her time, and I'm proposing things for us to do together, and I see how she behaves, and if she's supportive of me, so that is investing. And so she's investing in that friendship, and then she would be highly critical of all of that dynamic, and then decide if that investment was, worthy, in a sense of like, is this the child I was looking for? And we had several conversations about, this is not how best friends come to be, and this is really not what you should be looking at. But she needed a process. She wanted processes and guidelines and rules for things. Now we understand very well why, but by then we didn't, and all the pieces, when they join together, in hindsight you go like, this moment was telling us a little bit more than just that she was looking for a friend. So that there's a lot more than that. When you say that you had to reassure her of your role, her role, and that she was safe in school, in a way this is the same for every child. There is no difference, right? All children will have the need to understand and see that happen consistently in their daily basis, to kind of embody that and be safe and happy in school. Is the difference the frequency and the intensity of what she expected of you? Like, what draws the line in the sense of what is expected in a group of kids in that way, and what she was expecting of you? Because what you were doing for her was nothing more than you would do for any of the other children, as you said in our first meeting. And I recognize and I see that and I appreciate that, because all children deserve all of that. But where lies the differences?
I think, as you touched on it, is the amount of times that was needed to be shown to her for her to then believe it. That it wasn't just a one-off on the first day, it wasn't just the first half term. Actually, this is someone who is going to be really consistent throughout the whole year. Because I think often in teaching, you set off with really good intentions and you say you're going to do X, Y, and Z. And because of the nature of the job, it is so busy, you're getting pulled in 100 different directions. My very first head teacher described it as being, those plates that you have to spin.
Yep.
You have 10 of these plates all going on at the same time, whether that's communication with parents, or dealing with behaviour in class, or allergies in the class, or you're planning, or you're going to be observed, or whatever it is. And actually, some things will completely take your focus, and you can deal with that at that point. And as long as none of the plates fall off, as long as you kind of keep everything going, then you're doing a good job. And I think a lot of teachers end up burning out because they're trying to keep everything spinning all at once, and that's just not possible. I know I'm digressing slightly here, but I think behaviour in particular, for she needed just that reassurance and that understanding that I am the teacher, you are the student, your role is to learn and thrive and enjoy being in school and to be happy. My job is to facilitate that and to keep you safe, and to make sure that everybody in the class is doing what is expected of them. And if they don't, if people fall short of the expectation, then know that I'm going to do something about it.
I often
so I just think it's that reassurance, really.
I often describe what happened at year one with you is that you saw her and you saw the symptoms that she was bringing, the trauma, the anxiety, the need for reassurance. You saw them for what they are. It's a symptom of something that happened to her and not her personality, because it's very easy to then, this is the difficult child that is highly demanding. This is, a child that keeps like tagging along my skirt kind of thing. She's always wanting not only be with you, but physical contact and verbal feedback, so it is, I believe, easy to fall into the traps of like labeling this as a complex, difficult child and get fed up and annoyed with that behavior, instead of looking at it as a symptom that needs care and attention, with all the plates spinning at the same time.
But I think that's for all humans. Our behavior is telling other people what is going on inside emotionally. So it's not necessarily that someone is a difficult person or challenging, or they're rude to upset you. There is always going to be a reason that they are showing us how they're feeling of what's happened. And I think that's the same with Emmy, that actually she did need more reassurance and she did need more cuddles. And she grew so much from the start of the year to the end of the year to where she is now. She's so much more secure in who she is, what she needs. And I imagine those check-ins as she's gone through the school they've still been there, because I think actually that is part of who Emmy is. But I think they probably haven't been to the same degree as when she started.
And of course, was intense. The start was really intense, yes.
She's older as well, isn't she? Yeah. So she's maturing into this older child who can maybe internalize things or manage or regulate herself better without having to need external support to help guide her through that as well.
Yes. And also, now that we are aware of that full package, of we are getting to that point, it also helps us to understand what kind of differences we need to work, what kind of needs we need to be aware of. But it all started with one question, because when it's your first child, you don't really know the difference. When it's a child that didn't go to nursery because of the pandemic, you have no clue about, how other children her age behave. And although a lot of adults around her would say, she's incredible, she's got an amazing memory, oh my God, she can chat so well with anyone about anything, you just go like, yeah, I'm very chatty. She's like, mommy, my husband has an incredible memory. So yeah, of course, you don't really think that there's anything different there. It's just what you're used to. But then came reception with all the trauma and the bullying experience that I will explore in a different episode and share that with everyone, what happened and what led us to move away from from that school, and all that happened around there. But coming to year one and having her then settled emotionally, which was our first and biggest priority, and the thing that mattered the most, obviously, then other things started to emerge. Other differences started to show up. And things that we never had any threshold to compare her to. And it was one question that you said, so kindly in one of our, hundreds of thousands of conversations, or pick up or drop off or emails. And you asked me one question. Do you remember that question?
Have you ever considered that Em might be neurodivergent?
Yeah. And I obviously have, but never really thought about it as something with those words, like never faced it as in like, okay, somebody else can see what I can see, That moment was really hard. it was validation at the same time as it was like the unknown showing its face. You know, oh, here we go. You know, so yeah, perhaps, you know, she is a little bit too sensitive. Yeah, perhaps she is a little bit this or a little bit that, and there is an explanation for it. So it was your question that triggered us to look at her and start realizing that it's not just, you know, it's not just a child that is very emotional or very intelligent. It's just that there's something else in there. That what's in there, you know. And your first suspicion was dyslexia. You told me. And
Yeah.
can you tell me why and how does that connect to your life experience, please?
So meeting her on day one, I immediately thought this might be a child with autism. And I haven't actually ever said that to you. The reason I thought that was because of the toe walking. So yeah, and the fact that she wanted this singular best friend, and she had a really clear picture of what that would look like. So that was kind of where my thoughts were going initially. But obviously, as a teacher, I can't just come out. I haven't got the qualification to be able to do this. But I couldn't just say to you, "Oh, have you thought that actually she may have X, Y, and Z?" Because parents,
You didn't know me enough then.
Oh no, not at all. But parents very often aren't in a place either to hear that, because sometimes, especially within this kind of like Western society, it's seen as a negative, which it absolutely is not. In my mind, neurodiversity isn't, I've said this to you before, it's a superpower, it's a real strength. And yes, you may have these things that are challenges, and I use challenges rather than symptoms because I hate the fact that so often neurodiversity gets labelled as like an illness, because in my mind, they're not symptoms. They are traits that people have, but let's have a look at what the strengths are. So I kind of like trying to flip it on its head completely. I remember also saying to you about the disparity between her spoken language and her written language. And although she was really competent with reading, the fact that you've got that disparity immediately is alarm bells to me of, okay, actually there may be something more going on for this child. Let's kind of head towards maybe there's some dyslexia, or you just kind of, you see different traits, and then it's like a big puzzle piece of, I wonder if there is something else going on. What is the barrier for this child? Because her intelligence is not necessarily matching what we're seeing when she does her writing or what's coming down on paper. So from my own experience, I'm dyslexic, so I got picked up as being dyslexic when I got to university, but only because I went myself to the so at school we call it PCC, but I mean different places have different terminology, but it's basically like your SEN building for extra support. It's like, I'm rubbish at spelling. I have to work really, really hard to achieve the same results. So my brother is super intelligent and kind of like, he works hard, to be fair to him, but the amount of input I'd have to put in to even get half of the output that he was getting, it's like, this isn't necessarily about intelligence. I think there's something else going on for me personally. So I had obviously grown up knowing that these are things that I'm finding tricky, but I then internalise that as, well, it's because you're stupid or you don't work hard enough. So then to actually get to university and have that validation of actually, no, there is a reason, there is a barrier here. And for a long time I was like, I'm glad that I've got that validation of that's part of who I am. Responses from different people were like, oh, that's a negative, just don't tell anyone about it. Whereas I want to sing it from the rooftops of, look at these strengths that I have. I'm really like emotionally intelligent and I understand people and I can solve problems that other people can't solve. yes, I can't spell whatever word it is, but actually with the technology that we have at the moment, is that as big an issue? Or I might forget words and I can talk round what the word is that I'm trying to remember, or my husband's really good at filling in the gaps when we're having a conversation. So, yes, there are challenges, but there are massive strengths as well. And I hate the thought of children going through a system that isn't designed for children who are neurodivergent and thinking the same, that they're stupid when they're not. It's not that they're not working hard enough, it's that the system isn't designed for them. And actually, if we can help people around them understand who they are, but also for the child to have a better understanding of who they are, actually you're only going to create adults who are really self-assured, who can support the work environment so much better because they know who they are, and they know, yes, they will have these weaknesses or these challenges, but they'll know how to work around them. So we're getting the best out of everyone, not just those whatever percent of people who are like your academic divergent. Is that no? Like normal thinking. Normal thinking. Yeah. I don't know what the term would be.
Within the normal range, kind of.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, we want our children to grow up safe, ready for the future, and to have a positive schooling experience that shapes them for life. A school's pastoral care looks after some of the most important parts of a student's life, but it's some of the hardest to show, because behind every student is a parent hoping someone at school really sees their child. Through the Psychoeducation Studio, your students creatively explore the topics that matter and turn that thinking into a real piece of work, matching the school ethos and commitment to their well-being, something the whole school can be proud of. Learn more at julianalax.com.
Amy, the experience that you have with your own story has obviously shaped how you work and who you are in the classroom for the children. But you're not a SEND teacher, a special education teacher. You work with, a regular classroom that eventually will have a child with more needs from one aspect or the other. In terms of teacher training in the UK, from what you have experienced, how much is given in the regular training, not for the people who go dig deeper into SEND, into special education needs, but in the regular way, is the kind of puzzles of this neurodiversity pieces and what to do and how to recognize and how is it there? Do you feel this has been filled somewhat in by training or only by your personal experience, or what's the combination in that way?
So I think we probably had, and I'm thinking about maybe 2 or 3 lectures on neurodiversity. When you think about the percentage of people that will think differently within a classroom, that is very little. Your PGCE at that time was 1 year, this is when I did it, so 1 year of training at university and in schools. So you're kind of picking stuff up as you go in the school system when you're on placement. Then you have a year where you're not yet qualified, not fully qualified yet, but you are teaching in schools. It's now turned to 2 years, so that's obviously improved that you are getting training for longer. And I think it really depends on what school you work in and where you end up with how much support you'll get in-house to help you recognise this. And I think in a lot of schools, your Senko is the person who will have that extra training. So as a teacher, you might be looking at data, or you might be saying, actually, I think something's going on here, or the parent has come to me. But it wouldn't normally be your role to kind of specifically say to a parent, have you considered, or I think there may be a barrier here, and perhaps we can dig a little deeper. I think because of my degree being psychology, that's an interest of mine anyway. So I think probably I've just done a little bit more than maybe other teachers. But equally, every teacher is going to want the best for their students. You wouldn't go into this profession if you didn't want that. So I can't imagine there being a teacher that wouldn't ask those deeper questions. Maybe I'm being naive to, I've just worked in really lovely schools perhaps, but the teachers that I have worked with and have seen genuinely want the best for their students and will try and get that extra support. I think as well within the UK, there just isn't the support for you to be able to then support all the children in your class. So especially if you've got a child who may be neurodivergent but is particularly quiet and they're easygoing and they just get on, you might just put it down to, they're just rubbish at spelling, or they just really struggle socially. And then nothing more is done about it.
If the plate is not on fire, then just let the plate spin slowly.
Yeah.
That feels very much like that. If the child is not problematic or causing issues to other children, then it's a bit too much to handle without support. And as you said, it doesn't mean the teacher won't care. It's just there is so much they can deal with and that they have been trained to understand as well. So there's a lot in play, and because of that, I in conversation with other mums of children like Em, a lot of us are turning, if possible, and with a lot of sacrifices sometimes, to independent schools. And the way I see this, and I don't know if you agree with me, is just simply because there is less children in that classroom. And so the teacher is perhaps and hopefully able to look at your child and their needs with a little bit more time and appreciation for what's happening individually. It's just a matter of how many plates you're spinning at the speed that you're spinning those plates, and that's why that choice comes for many parents, or homeschooling if they're able to. But it happens to a lot of us to fall off the system, and I wanted to learn from you if you think that there's more questions in play, or is it really the number of kids in the classroom that kind of prevents you from having that direct contact, from having that feedback and relationship with the neurodivergent child that needs that extra time and support?
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head there, actually. Having fewer children means that you can, it's the wrong word, but kind of invest in those children more, have more detailed conversations with the parents. It's not just a 5-minute parents meeting once a term or at the end of the term. 30 children in a room, especially if you haven't got additional adult support in that room as well, is incredibly challenging. And you can very easily get sucked into the idea that I'll support my lowest ability and I'll try and stretch my highest, and the ones in the middle, they'll just coast, they'll be fine. And I think where you're, certainly from my experience of when I taught in state schools, you are not just picking up the education side of things for those students. It might be that some of those kids haven't had breakfast, or you might have to do extra stuff for social and welfare, or there was a police incident, or there's all of these extra things that are coming to the teacher that never would have done, that actually, again, you've suddenly got all of these extra plates that are spinning, so you can't support everyone in the way that you would necessarily want to. I also want to point out that in independent, very often you've got a full-time TA, and they are absolute gold dust. Having an extra adult who can really see the bigger picture of what's going on with those children is utterly invaluable. I think when you're the teacher and you're at the front and you are kind of delivering those lessons, you don't always see the little nuances that an extra adult can pick up. And so often, if you can build up that really positive relationship with your TA, they will say to you, oh, have you noticed that such and such is doing this? Or have you picked up on this? And it really is this team effort to support those children. Whereas often now in state schools, because you haven't got the funding, you might have one adult in a room of 30, you might have a TA in some of the younger year groups. So then things get missed. And that's not to the fault of the teacher necessarily, that is the system. And one person can only do so much. But I just think your role is not just to teach the children, but also to communicate with the parents, and you should be working together. It shouldn't be a closed door, they're in school, that's your problem now. Or, okay, they've gone home now, so I don't need to think about them anymore. You are in partnership with any parent who comes into your classroom. And I feel really strongly that it's your responsibility to be open and honest with people of what you're seeing, because ultimately you are the expert. And we touched on this the other day of actually how many children one teacher will come in contact with, not just within a day, but within a year or within their teaching career. So you have got that knowledge and that experience of, oh, actually, a few years ago I taught a little boy who was like this, or a little girl who had similar tendencies. Oh, and they ended up seeing an educational psychologist and they had these traits. So that's really similar. And as you say, as a parent, you may only have your own children, or maybe nephews and nieces who you have that kind of exposure to. Actually, as a teacher, you've got such a wealth of experience of different humans, whether that's the adults themselves or the children themselves.
The entire range, how the children operate, and also parents, and different families, different systems, and how they respond as well to those challenges will teach that teacher for the next time that they encounter a child with difficulties and with challenges. So that's exactly what you're saying. It's a key point. Teachers should be that kind of center of reference in terms of this child falling into the edges of the range, and why, and what can we do to support them. But I guess that not all parents are ready to receive that communication, to listen to it, to think about it with an open heart and without all the biases that neurodiversity carries with it, that normally it's a negative thing. So within your experience, I think the way we received your question, I hope it was a positive way. I hope my face was not like, my jaw didn't drop to the ground. I think it felt very much like a reassurance moment. It felt more like okay, now she's safe. We are ready to move on into how can we best support this child. We need to understand her. But were there moments that communicating with parents did not create a positive outcome for the child or for yourself, because of how society understands neurodiversity?
I've had, where I've tried to broach parents before and have these conversations, I've either been told they're too young, they're young in the year, you're judging them, let them be children, let them find their own way, which absolutely, if that's the correspondence that I'm getting back, I will completely respect that. Actually, A, I might be wrong, B, that adult might be completely right, even though there might be still this nagging doubt for me. But actually, people aren't always ready to hear your perspective on something, and that's okay. It's a lot to receive, isn't it? Especially if you feel that someone's being critical. And so I think so often children will do things, whether it's behaviourally or just who they are, and it's often parents will take it as a personal, you're telling them off or you're being critical of them, whereas actually you're just feeding back, this is what's happened today. This isn't a reflection on you as a person, this isn't a reflection on your parenting, this is a 6-year-old child being a 6-year-old child, and this is what has happened, and this is what we're going to do, like, moving forward. And I think sometimes when things happen in class, or when you're feeding back to parents about that niggling doubt of, oh, I think there might be a barrier, sometimes people really take it openly and go, do you know what, my dad is like this, and we've always thought that maybe he's dyspraxic because he's always struggled to do up his buttons or whatever it is, or it is just completely shut down. And I think I've said to you before, where I then subsequently got in trouble, I've had a complaint put in against me for raising a concern where I thought there was a barrier, but I was told, no, we want the support, we want the intervention, but we don't want any paper trail. We don't want our child to get labelled. We've seen what labelling does to people. And I think, especially if you're a parent who is neurodivergent themselves, and if they've then had a really negative experience at school themselves, there's that potential of guilt of, okay, these are my genetics and that's the reason that my child is struggling with X, Y, and Z. And that's not, as a school, where we're ever coming from. It's not a blame or you're the reason that they're finding this tricky, or it's always with the best intention of, we want to support your child together, and actually having a better understanding for them of who they are, but for everyone around them can only be a good thing. But I think as well, in the UK, people aren't always as open to receive that information, or to, sometimes there is that kind of idea of, oh, we'll just ignore it and it will go away. But equally, having someone say this about your 5 or 6-year-old, they are super young. Actually, maybe in state schools, or lots of people won't ever hear this information until their child is 11 or 12. And then maybe they don't get the SATs results they're expecting, or what have you. And then suddenly it's based on grades rather than experience of the teacher, perhaps.
Yes. And as you said, your identification as dyslexic came much later in life, and that caused you to grow up thinking a lot of negative thoughts about yourself. So it is quite surprising in a way for me to think that parents wouldn't want to understand what's going on and then provide with the best support so that child doesn't go through a negative experience of identity and self-worth because of those challenges. And quite the contrary, can actually work on a positive and affirmative way of dealing with their own neurodiversity. So identifying it in early stages, to me, means giving the child that opportunity, of growing with a good positive sense of self. And we can only do that when we break the biases about the words that we use and the connotations that we bring with those labels, with those diagnoses, with that type of identification. So what is the importance of early identification to you? Like, is that about identity? What else is in play when you identify a child so early?
I think it's identity. I think it's for the child's self-esteem of, let's look at my superpower rather than the things that I find tricky. I think understanding that actually it is okay to find things hard, and we're not all the same, and some people will find things harder than others, and some people will find other things easier. But there are things that we can put in place to support you as an individual, but other children, to know that other children will need things that you don't need, because actually you've already learned to do this, but some other children haven't learned to do it yet. But that doesn't mean that they never will if they're given the right support. I think language of like grandparents and parents. So certainly when I was growing up, neurodiversity wasn't really talked about. I think if you think about autism or dyslexia, for example, it was the extremes within that bell curve that were flagged. So then it became this kind of this thing that you didn't want, even though even at the extremes of your bell curve there are many strengths as well. Yeah, and I'm just reflecting on my own experience. Like, my mum was a teacher. She would always put so much support in for me. Like, we'd always be playing like these spelling games, and like she'd be doing so much to help me, more than, and I knew there was a difference between me and my two brothers because they didn't need to have any of these like different games or what have you. But then, yeah, once I got my diagnosis, I was like, oh, okay, this is part of. This makes so much more sense now. I'm not stupid. It's just that I find that element challenging. And as I said earlier, it wasn't until much later that I then started to reflect on what the strengths were rather than just those challenges. So I think, just to go back and to answer your question, I think it just helps to develop self-esteem, kind of that understanding of self, but also how other people can support you and how you can remove those barriers. There are so many simple things that you can do that support everybody in your classroom or everyone within society, rather than just those people that might find a certain element of something difficult.
Yes.
Actually, it's inclusive, isn't it?
Yes.
And that's what you want. You want an inclusive classroom, but also an inclusive society.
Yes. Yes. That's the word. And to finalize our conversation, and I think to say again and again and again the importance of somebody, of you in our life, of a teacher that sees inclusivity as part of the connective tissue of all of those plates that is spinning, and all of those children at the same level of importance, each in their own needs. And I always joke, like, my husband didn't cry watching me come down the aisle, but he did cry at the end of year 1 when he met you at the supermarket. And this 6'3" man broke down in thanking you for all that you've done for our daughter. And to me that says it all. It touched us profoundly, and that is the power that teachers have, and that is something that needs to be recognized and praised. So before I say thank you, and once again, I'd like to play a little message, because somebody was very upset not to be on this podcast. I'm robbing her chance of having this conversation in public, and sharing her thoughts about it, likely preventing her from being famous, allegedly. So I'd like to play you a little message, if that's okay. I hope you can hear. I will send this to you. There you go.
Dear Miss Denbee, I will always remember how you looked after me. When I started year 1, I was a bit scared of making friends. And I was scared I was going to get bullied again. But you made me feel safe. And you're my favourite teacher. And I'll love you forever and ever.
That's with all the love in the world. And before I start crying, thank you, Amy. teachers like you make a whole lot of a difference for everyone, but for families of children with special needs. The kindness and the honesty that you brought, and that was invaluable and a turning point in our lives. So thank you.
Well, it's my absolute pleasure. I loved you being part of my life as well, and obviously I see her around the school now and see how much she's grown from that very first day, and it just fills my heart with joy. And something that you won't know, I was very close to leaving teaching after the year that I taught not because of because of other
Thank
things.
you.
Yeah.
That's reassuring.
Other things that had gone on, and you probably won't remember, you wrote me the most beautiful card just saying, actually I can remember you were saying that I was this blessing that you had kind of prayed for, and that you couldn't have imagined a better person for Em. And I was thinking, actually, if I can make a difference to one child this profoundly, this is the right career for me. And so it goes both ways, actually, having parents who are open and want to work with you to support our next generation of children coming through. Actually, it makes a world of difference for the teachers as well. So thank you.
Oh, I wasn't expecting that, and I thank you for sharing this. And please do not quit ever. We still have a little one coming through, and we're counting on you returning from your maternity leave to get him at year 1. So. A complete different experience for sure, but yes, something that we do very much look forward to, and we do talk a lot about it. When it's his turn with Miss Denbee, when it's his turn, we're going to see a difference. I want to see what she's going to say when it's his turn. So,
my pleasure.
So it's all that happens. After the kid leaves your classroom. That I guess that for many teachers, that's the end. And I've been very fortunate that we are in the same school, and it's just, it's not a small school, but it is a quite close community, and that we can see each other very often, and that we can, keep on checking up on each other, and you're always, looking at her and watching her grow, and she looks back at you and knows that you're there for her. She says it many times, it's really magical in a way. So thank you. Yes, this conversation, I think it's the most personal of all of the conversations that I've planned for the podcast so far. And as I said, I will explore in a different episode all that led us to you, to the school, to that big move, and then subsequently after your question, what led us to come to what is her full picture in her neuro complexity, because it didn't stop there, right? It was the question that kind of kick-started everything in the sense of this whole neurodiverse world. So we'll pick up on that on different episodes that I invite everyone to watch, and I will be very happy sharing all of those things with everyone, and listening back from people about their experiences with teachers and with schools, and what's working and not working for them, and perhaps with your words today, I hope they can look at teachers more kindly as well. It's a lot of spinning plates, and I understand how we all need our kids to be looked at individually, but this is a big challenge for our society, and with the very small resources that we have available. So yeah, thank you. I can say thank you to you for a few hours, so I'll finish here.
Well, thank you for having me on the podcast as well.
Thank you.
I
And you
know
enjoy
that.
your beautiful holiday now. You can have the kids running around. I will send you the message that she recorded. I asked her to write it down, and she was super excited because I allowed her to use my laptop for writing it down. And then she needed to highlight each word in a different color and make it different sizes. It was a whole afternoon, cartwheels and bumping on the laptop, making me feel like I regret this decision. But yeah, she was very happy to contribute.
That's so sweet. I'll make sure I send her a message back.
Thank you. She'll be expecting that, but for now, she is ruling Granny's house in her blow-up swimming pool and her pretend cocktail drink. I'll send you a picture. It's the funniest thing in the world. It's like Little Madam. So thank you very much, Amy. Enjoy your holiday and your beautiful French cottage.
Thank you very much. Enjoy I hope the days go okay as well.
I will. Thank you. We'll speak soon.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Amy, for this lovely conversation. We are eternally grateful to you and so happy to have you in our lives. Sometimes, and especially for families of neurodiverse children, teachers have an impact that cannot be measured and goes beyond the classroom. Recognizing their importance and their struggles as individuals who can have such an influence on how our kids experience school is something I don't take lightly. Amy was for us more than a teacher, and I wish every child could have such a bond and experience in their lives. Thank you for listening to our conversation. I would love if you can comment and let me know what you thought of this episode. Please remember to subscribe or follow as I learn and discuss more about giftedness, twice exceptionality, neurodivergent family life, and educational systems. If you would like to share your story or learn more about me, visit julianalax.com. Ciao, see you next time.